To the left, we have the Sony A90J. To the right, we have the Sony A8G. Now, in short, this is a tie. So if that's all you came here for, you're good to go. But if you want a more in-depth answer, smack a like on this video. We're getting to the point right now. So simply put, I mean, there's a lot that kind of goes both good and bad for both of these TVs. We're going to talk about color, we're going to talk about hues, we're going to talk about black levels and motion, and then round out with final thoughts, essentially just kind of letting you know how they do. Now, as I watch this opening scene, one of the earlier moments in Batman Arkham Knight, we can see that there's a lot of hues and colors that are just far more accurate on the Sony A8G, and that's kind of the theme here. The Sony A8G just has more accuracy overall, where the A90J tends to fall short even after calibration. There's just nothing you can do about it. They're just two different TVs that target two different styles. And that's going to really vex some people, because some people are going to expect to be able to see all that stuff on camera. Please remember, these are not going to be 100% accurate representations. I have no way of 100% accurately representing every detail that I'm talking about here. So I really hope you'll bear with me on that. Another thing to keep in mind, I'm using video game content because copyright content like movies, sports, they usually get blocked immediately and hold strong penalties if you post them, so I'm not going to be posting any of that stuff. So for the person probably typing in the comment section, who watches video games? Who compares TVs with video games? We should be seeing movies. You can have those opinions, but the law is the law, and I'm not going to break it just because you want to see what you want to see. So sorry, but if that's also something that bothers you, you can click off now, because this whole thing is going to be with the video game, because that's all I can show you. Now, that being said, it's not all bad, though. There are things that you will be able to most definitely see in this comparison. And one of the big ones that I saw is that there is such a difference in the style that Sony has gone with as of late. And I don't know if it's a good one. I don't know if it's a bad one, but it's a style. I don't know, right? So one of the things that I've noticed is that you kind of have moments where you clip a lot of your information and you just lose a lot of detail, or you'll be dimming some areas of highlights where you probably would have wanted them. I won't deny that the highlight placement on the Sony A90J is better than the Sony A8G by leaps and light years even. But it just gets it wrong sometimes, and that leads to a loss of image quality, and that's something that you probably need to know about. Another thing to consider is the fact that, Sony is charging $3,000, and that's how I'm going to be rating this TV. So if it seems hard or rough, sorry, not sorry. We've got to make sure that for $3,000 they delivered. So I'll do the good stuff first, okay? You can see when you get to colors like this, it's a domination for the Sony A90J. You have more of the pure reds. You have more of the blues, the greens. The yellow on the wall is more pronounced. Stuff like that, definitely going to show through. But the Sony A8G, not falling too far behind at all. And honestly speaking, I mean, while Triluminous Pro is doing a great job this year at providing definitely vastly more vibrant colors, and in some cases more accurate primary colors, it does tend to get it wrong sometimes. Though I will say it is a nice addition. You can see that in this is a total destruction of the Sony A90J, or rather the A8G to the right. Now, the A90J does have that clipping problem that I talked about. If you look at Alfred's face on his cheek, you can notice on the left-hand side, somewhere over there, you'll notice that he's missing a lot of detail that he has on that A8G to the right. That's one of those things that kind of really had me wanting to test highlights a little bit more and really investigate how big of a problem this can be. So then I went in and screenshotted this, and I saw this, and it was just immediately noticeable. So if we look, there's a little circle here that on the A90J just almost goes completely clipped and is missing. Now again, I've played around with all kinds of different settings, but essentially this is just an algorithmic thing that happens. What the A90J is choosing to do instead is brighten up the little droplets on Batman's suit, making it far more visible, Batman himself more three-dimensional, and so they're choosing what parts of your image to kind of, I guess, cast away or to mute down. Again, this is going to bother some people, but this is a reoccurring theme. I have another image here down at the bottom. I don't even think I would have to go that far down to show you what I'm talking about here. I believe it will show up in actually this opening scene here. I could just let that play out and show you. There's going to be moments where you're going to notice, while yes, the color is definitely clearly better on the Sony A90J to the left, the Sony A8G is going to have a moment here. We're going to see the highlight detail kind of overexposed a little bit on the background of the A90J, and you're going to miss some key detail in the tree line, and the depth is going to suffer as a result. And this is a big deal because Sony is talking about their cognitive processor this year. That's their big push this year, cognitive. Like now, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. More of the trees are visible in that tree line back there than what we have on the A90J. And it gets even worse when you look at some other examples, like I think this was one of those other examples. Maybe it's a little difficult to see, but essentially you can see more in the tree line on the A8G than you can on the A90J, except for directly down the center. So like on the A90J, this is all far more visible, but in other examples, which again, I'm not even going to try because I can't show you on camera. I don't have enough dynamic range to show you. So, you know, that's just one of those things. You're going to miss dynamic range sometimes. Now, another thing that I wanted to kind of highlight, the A90J struggles greatly with motion. And I mean greatly. It's both smooth and juddery. So watch as this scene kind of kicks on. You'll notice that there's a lot of judder that will happen around the flash, like now and now. The A8G doesn't suffer from this kind of choppy motion. And this makes watching things on the A8G a lot more pleasing. Now, this is important to note because LG also has better experiences when you talk about motion than the Sony A90J. And both of these TVs, the A8G and things like the LG C10 at the moment, are cheaper. Now that kind of leads you to believe that Sony maybe is kind of overselling this processor a bit. And that's kind of how I feel. I feel like while these TVs definitely tie, because I found the contrast to be beautiful on the A90J, and I found the depth to be nice. The details are next level. There are still some things that really aren't, like the fact that the Sony A8G can keep up so well. And I mean, it's on its ass, kind of like, you know, both flashes right now chasing each other and beating each other down. That's kind of this entire story right now. It's just kind of like, for every hit you give, there's another one you receive. And that's just like, the A90J is just not, how do I say this? It is not the smoothest TV. We'll just say that, because if I use too many superlatives, it just kind of angers some people and they don't understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. So we're going to go into this scene. I've noticed a shit ton more banding on the A90J than on the Sony A8G. Now, I'm sure at this point in the video, people are probably feeling like, wow, man, this is pretty negative. I mean, how can you say that they are tied? While yes, there is more banding, I still find the depth, the color, like now, to be better on the A90J. I find that the draw distances are better on the A90J, so every little detail in a movie or video game will stick out. I find that there are some differences in sound that have just really changed the game for the A90J, like the subwoofer they have. That shit kicks. Very awesome. Banding now looks terrible on the A90J. Color accuracy on the A8G does look better, but the A90J is more vibrant. So it's kind of like the A90J performs a lot more like a QLED, if anything, than an OLED, which is very weird. It's a very weird development here. I don't know what Sony's direction was. It's a style, but it's a very different type of style than what we've seen. I can say that when we talk about shadow detail, also the Sony A90J does have a black crush problem. I had to raise my black levels to 53 to be able to do what the Sony A8G could do by default. And even still, if you notice, the horse is darker on the A90J than it is on the A8G. So there's still black crush happening. I see less detail with my naked eye in the armor of the samurai. And in the overall army, I see less detail. So you're seeing less, you're getting more banding, you're clipping out some information. They're trading colors back and forth very closely. The A8G has more accuracy on a lot of occasions. You know, it's like for $3,000, Sony didn't deliver, not compared to the A8G. And that's just basically as honest as anybody can tell you. We can show some more examples here. Spider-Man is my favorite game to use for those examples because I think you can see them very clearly. I'll open this scene up because maybe we'll see a lot more of what I'm trying to show off here, but essentially the color accuracy on the A8G is just next level. I mean, I can't seriously sit here and say that the A90J isn't throwing punches, because it totally is, absolutely, but it's not throwing enough punches for $3,000. I've definitely seen the Sony A8H compete like this. Does it have better color accuracy than the A8H? Yeah, it definitely does. I've tested purples, and purples don't look as off as the A8H, but in all the areas that it's kind of bad, I feel like, especially with motion, the A8H would have done the exact same thing for a whole hell of a lot less money. I think, like, the camera is so hard because, like, when this scene comes in and when all these scenes come in, it's just going to show, like, crushed black, way oversaturated colors now as I look down at the monitor here. Neither one looks good. You're not going to get most of what I'm saying, but hopefully you can kind of take it with a grain of salt. Trust what I'm saying here. Now, I like using this particular scene because it shows a lot of what I'm talking about. The A90J's highlights are brilliant. You can see that as he kicks off that electricity, like all that. It looks really nice. Hugh's on the floor looking good. But now watch what happens. This is where it gets fun. It literally changes immediately to favor the A8G with color accuracy, even though just a second ago, the A90J had the lead. Look at this. Watch as Spider-Man enters the frame. Look at Electrode's suit. Look at the overall environment. Look at the ground. Look at the stonework on the building. All of that just looked way more accurate on the A8G to the right than the A90J to the left. And this is a reoccurring theme. They trade blows so closely that it's just like, why did Sony gas this up so much? Profit, I'm sure, but they really made it seem like the cognitive processor was so much more capable than anything they've ever done, and it's not. If anyone's being honest with you, it's really not that much more capable than an X1 Extreme chip. Because here I am with an X1 Extreme chip, Sony A8G, and it's definitely holding its own in color accuracy. Like, definitely. In a lot of scenes, not every scene. And that's where I kind of have to call it a tie, though. Because while right now the A90J is kind of falling behind in terms of color accuracy, it has color vibrancy, it has the color volume and highlight detail. So there are other pieces to it that they do win. And it gets conflicting, guys. It gets rough because you want to say that one's better than the other. You want to say that one's dominating the other. But if you're being honest here, you really can't say that, because for everything they give, they take something away. And that's kind of like the experience as a whole so far. They give you this cheap box that's like found on an Insignia TV, you know. They give you some like lazy experience as far as like you just kind of get what you get with Sony. And it's just kind of like, from the way that they force you to submit to terms of service, or you can't even use your TV, right down to just the way they handle their business nowadays, it just seems like Sony's just kind of like, we're Sony, we're our name, we're big enough, we can do what we want. We've got the clout we had been chasing from day one, and now we're going to just use it and grandstand on our name instead of actually live up to what the name is supposed to mean. And that's like the real answer here. Now, again, I can show you some other scenes like this, like as games open up, color now shifts to looking way better on the Sony A90J to the left. But you know, when you have to split hairs like this too often, and you have to say, okay, let me pull up something that looks better on the A90J. This looks better on the A90J. And yeah, most things do look better on the A90J in terms of color, but not so much so that the A8G or any other OLED TV, I would dare to say, just couldn't compete. And like one of the things that really gave it away for me, this is not going to show up on camera, skin tones. Skin tones can be one of the most wild things. Now, this is extremely oversaturated because Sony really struggles with showing the color red. So all of this is oversaturated right now. You're going to have to go off of the voice that I'm kind of putting out there right now. Okay, the commentary is everything in this particular moment. Really all of the moments here, but you know, some people are just going to believe what they want. But anyway, the Sony A90J to the left has the more natural skin tones. You have better reds, you have better color, and that's what let me know that the Sony A8G can fall behind in some key areas where you would want it to deliver. Also, as I looked at this, not at all going to show up on camera. The BOA on Hulk Hogan right now is just not nearly as accurate as it is on the A90J. The reds on the A90J, pinpoint accurate, very pure, very beautiful. Contrast, far superior to anything the A8G is kicking out to the right. So that's one of the things that I did notice. Now, then I look at this, skin tones. Again, another win on the A90J. As we look right here, we can see Nathan Drake's brother looking far more realistic, but the one that gave it away, Nadine Ross. I mean, look at that. That was a massive difference that I did see. Now, of course, she looks like an Oompa Loompa on the A90J on my camera as I look down and look at the monitor. It's not what she actually looks like, but I'm telling you right now, like, the differences are real. You can see every droplet of sweat in her face, and you can really feel that emotion in that scene way more than you can on the Sony A8G, where it's just kind of there. So that's why they're tied, because while, yeah, it messes up in some areas and a lot, as I mentioned in this video, it redeems itself later on in color. It redeems itself in the contrast placement. Some things can be really tight. This is one of the things that let me know contrast can get really, really tight. Now, again, I don't know what it's going to look like on camera, but contrast is really tight. You don't have any aliasing or anything like that, and it just looks super duper duper clean. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for pinpoint accuracy, really sharp contrast, but then counteractively, it gets funny because if you go to this image, the Sony A8G to the right will absolutely dominate the A90J to the left because you have all this depth and dimensionality that the A90J just doesn't have for all its talks of, you know, depth placement and cognitive reality. So this is where I'm finding the X1 Extreme chip to be more of a benefit than the XR chip, and the XR chip to be a little bit more of a gimmick. So it's not all that they gas it up to be. And it's important to show this stuff in real time because it happens in real time. Like the back and forth exchange on these TVs are very real. I want to see if I have that one screenshot. I don't know if I took it. Essentially, there's one, I probably just have to substitute it for something else. Essentially, when you look at like sharp highlights like this, the A90J like looks and hunts for tall, sharp highlights like this and hones in on it, tightens it up, and really gets it like fucking perfect, pardon my French. But there is no other way to say that. There has never been a TV as perfect as the Sony A90J for contrast in those moments. And those moments are so brilliant because you just really see a new level of image quality that didn't exist before the TV. And then in that regard, they're living up to the hype. Draw distances. I was watching Jacob and Katie Schwartz demos. It's living up to the hype in that regard. But then in other areas, when you get to images like this, the depth on the A8G starts beating it. So this is one of the hardest comparisons because it's literally a tit for tat. And honestly speaking, I can't say that the Sony A90J is, you know, leaps and bounds ahead. I had another one that really, I'm not gonna lie, it really shocked me. And then I kind of like, for a second, was feeling a type of way about it because I didn't expect to be shocked. I actually have the screenshot I was talking about earlier. Okay, so like, again, in screenshots like this is where the cognitive processor really delivers. It hones in on things like the Batmobile. It hones in on things like the light sources in the back here. That kind of stuff really hones in a lot better than what I have on the A8G. Not to say the A8G does bad, but I can see the contrast far superiorly than what I have on the A8G to the right on the A90J. Now, again, it's one of those things that, like I was saying earlier, there's a highlight here that you guys may see it, you may not. But as I look at it with my naked eye, the Sony A8G just bodied the hell out of the A90J, and this little highlight right behind Supergirl, and it's just like on the A90J over here, it's just kind of lacking a bit. So again, the moral of the story here is that they do trade blows way too much. There's a lot that happens here. Like in this scene, it probably just looks overly blue or whatever, but the tonal accuracy, the skin accuracy on the A90J is slightly better now. I don't know. It's a tit for tat game. It's a game of cat and mouse, and that's really as honest as it gets. So I hope by showing this off, it can kind of explain a little bit more as to what you can expect from the Sony A90J. If you have questions or there's something particular that you need to see, let me know. We're going to be doing more comparisons, but we're going to be doing the C10. We're going to be doing the A90J versus the KS8000. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, I'll see you guys later.